All right, we are back. Pardon the mess. My place is still a construction zone, and so kind of working with what I got here. Uh, I'm gonna go through some MCP stuff today. I want to talk about something we're working on, but I also kind of wanted to showcase a workflow. It's occurred to me that people don't really understand the value of MCP in a bunch of situations. So we're gonna try to show that. I need to get a second MCP that we're working on. I've not tested this one, so we'll see if it works, but should be good. Okay. We need set this up. This is Spotlight, which if you're not familiar, is ignore our home page here, but let's put it over here. This is this thing, which what it does is it takes a bunch of Sentry telemetry from our SDKs, and it just makes it available locally. So you don't actually need our cloud services; it just uses our open source tech. It intercepts it, it funnels it to a thing, that thing shows you it locally. Sometimes it's useful. In this context, it's not because it's just a browser trace, but it's everything we have. So it's like you hit an error on the page on the server, have logs, etc. It's all going to show in this UI. Not a big deal because that's actually not what we care about. Let's go back here. What we want is the MCP service that we built into Spotlight. So I think I have, okay. We will launch this more formally probably next week. I've got this configured here, Spotlight MCP. So let's see. What I want to do today is we're going to go through, we're going to wing it, and we're going to see if we can fix some stuff. Why is Sentry disconnected? Okay, let's resolve this. It's going to pop the window. Okay. No redirect URL provided. Oh, this is because it doesn't copy the full link from terminal. I don't know, blame Windows. All right. So that is authenticated. All our stuff should work. Great, great, great. Okay, yeah, everything works. MCP service. So we're going to try to fix something on the MCP service because I wanted something real. So I've got this, this is actually not the one. I've got this thing here. We've got a bunch of like schema validation errors, which is where Sentry's API is returning something that I didn't expect at the very least, which might mean the API is right. It might mean the API is wrong. I don't really know. I'm not going to open our source code, but we're going to try to fix this. So the thing that is beautiful about the MCP is it just enables a bunch of these like clean workflows. So my favorite is this, and this is what I keep kind of preaching to people. I've got this URL to a Sentry issue, right? Everything's aware of that. Help me diagnose the URL, right? You cannot do this without something like MCP. A CLI isn't going to do this. Maybe you could build one, and then you could tell the LLM that the CLI is there, and you could give it all these things. I'm not having to build one here. You know, it's just plug and play. It's good to go. And so what this is going to do is it's going to pull down the core issue information. But what's good about this is we curate this experience. So it's also pulling down Sear's analysis of it. And Sear is our sort of complex root cause system. It may or may not be necessary in this case, but what this does is it takes a lot of data in Sentry, our trace connected data, and it pieces that together to try to come up with a more reliable solution. And this is actually useful because this will look across services. So in our case, the MCP, I probably have it down here. The MCP here is actually, I'm not going to open this because I'm sure there's PII and hopefully I'm not leaking anything already. We make calls to the Sentry API server. Sorry, the Sentry API server. We actually have the full scope of those calls in here. And so Sear actually has the full scope of those calls as well, in that it can look all the way through all of our systems. So you can see Snuba's internal data model for spans defines event ID as an optional field, allowing it to be null. That's interesting. You could never know that without the trace connected data. Also, this is unscripted. I'm actually kind of surprised by that, but it's good to know. So it should be nullable. So let's fix it. So this is going to, okay. So what it did is it first pulled down the data with issue details. And in that payload, which can I show you? Okay. in that payload, it actually gives you a high-level analysis from SEER, which I need to expand this a little bit yet. Yeah, it's actually kind of useless in this situation. I probably have an issue with rendering. Anyways, it didn't give me that much information here, and it's like, it tells you. Actually, I have a feeling that Cloud Code has clipped this. There should be more text below this, I think. Doesn't matter. It gives you some SEER summary information because we're trying to manage how much context we give at any given time. And so this one's giving you a bunch of summary information. It's giving you some stack trace bits, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not giving you everything. And so it's like, okay, I need more. So it's going to run this analyze with SEER function, which is like, cool, I already have the analysis. I'm going to get you the information from that, which is much more in depth. It's similar to what you'd see in our UI. And this is the magic, by the way. Like this is bringing all that into your sort of code editor. And this is really important because you might look at something like SEER and it's like, why do I need this? Oh, I have a stack trace. I'll just copy paste it in. And you could try that. It's not going to know that the underlying system set event ID should be null, obviously, because I had no idea in this case. And that error had no idea in that case. It just said the data was null, not it should be null, which could have been any number of problems, right? And so it's very powerful in that, but it's particularly powerful when you don't use it in the UI. And so we actually have SEER running on, let me show you this. So there's these settings here. This is not an ad for SEER, but this is like a really important workflow. So we actually have SEER running all the time. And we're going to mess with our pricing and packaging because this is a little bit expensive to do today. But what you want basically is this automatic running, because it's not about, we should relabel this. It's not about triggering fixes or anything like that. It's just about having this ready to go when you're looking at a bug. So that's what we did here. We've got it down here. I mean, this is a trivial fix, but you kind of get the point. Like, I'm not doing anything here. I dumped in the URL. I'm like, hey, help me out. And it works. It works great. And this is really the flow that I think is unbelievably powerful with MCP. Because there's this argument about what is MCP? Is it good? Is it bad? Blah, blah, blah. I actually don't care. What I want is this to work. This exact thing I just did, that's how I would operate as a human. It's like, hey, I've got this URL. Can you help me fix it? Okay, the system can't query that data. It's never going to be able to query that data. Like, it would have to bypass a bunch of security checks. We're never going to allow it to do that. MCP is a nice, secure way that allows us to do that. So that's one thing that's pretty cool. I want to show you the Spotlight then, because this is also interesting. We're probably not going to need it in this case. But what Spotlight would let me do, let me show you here. This is super rough, so don't think too much about it. It actually is able to get all the local telemetry from your application. So if you're using the Sentry SDK, which again, open source, unrelated to our cloud service, even though it's only used for our cloud service, if you instrument your app with that, you've got errors, you've got logs, you've got traces, you've got all this stuff that's really, really valuable. And right now we've just like really quickly exposed errors and logs, but you can actually query these things. And so I'll show you what that lets you do in a second, but unfortunately we already have a fix because that was a little bit too easy. Let me just check this. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised actually. Did we not have any fixtures that included this field? Should we add one if there's a relevant simple test that we could confirm it's going to handle the input output correctly, similar to our existing snapshot tests? I just prefer no more regressions. What's interesting though, so let's say, I don't know if I actually have all the dependencies installed, so let me check this real quick. Be right back. How do I pause the recording? Okay, we are unpaused. Sorry, had to get the door. It is still going through determining our test situation. We're going to let it solve that in the background. But we're going to boot up the MCP local development server. Is that the right? It might be. Let's find out. MCP service has gotten quite complex if this console output is not an indicator. I think that's the right URL. but I could be wrong. What other random hosts? Is it the 5173? Okay, whatever. Nope, that's the wrong thing. Where's that even running? That should not be running. Hang on. I think this is a runaway process. Okay, let's bring you back. Okay. 2025, and we still can't handle process management. Boot this back up. Okay, it's 5173. All right, so MCP service, you've probably seen this, mcp.sentry.dev. If you haven't, it's a production version. This is my toy site, I guess, if you will, but it's also where you get information about the MCP. Interesting. Interesting. That could be useful. Let's hijack this terminal over here. Sorry for the infinite consoles. I just hit an error in the UI. This may or may not work. I have not tested this flow because this is still early. What is it gonna do? Yeah. This is what we want. I wasn't sure how well our prompt descriptions were at this point. Except, why didn't we get the error? Oh, this is probably, I'm pretty sure this is because Sentry is not configured correctly here. Ah, so close, so close. Anyways, okay, we're not going to go to the spotlight stuff because I got to spend some time and that is way too long for this recording. But you get the idea. That should have gone into Spotlight, our sidecar, and then the MCP is just one of the consumer, or I guess actually publishers in this case, that Cloud Code could then consume in this case, which is very, very cool. And the idea was actually inspired. I was building an iOS app, and I was using the Xcode build MCP, and it actually exposes build logs. And you actually see a lot of people messing around with this, like, oh, could we give it the browser logs or these other things? And that's great, except most of you already use Sentry. Most of the industry does. We work in every single platform. I've got a mobile app. I've got a desktop app. I've got JavaScript. I've got servers. It all just works. It all just works through one single entry point. And that's the beauty of this. What's really cool is we were thinking about this. Actually, I'll show you this other app. So so I have this thing I was experimenting with. I wanted to build dynamic documentation. So we're experimenting with this. Doesn't really matter. Come on. What does that even mean? What is wrong here? And also, why is this shutting down right now? That has nothing to do with this. I don't know. I'm going to figure it out later. Probably needs a build purse or something. I don't know what's going on here. This is a very early project, sorry. So we've got this thing. That should load up right here. No, it's conflicting over here. Yeah. I've got this, it's got to be on the correct port. It just annoys me when it's not. So I've got this saying that I wanted to build dynamic documentation. So we're doing this like, there's a set of building blocks we have. This is going to change. This was like very, very quickly just cogent. But if you've gone through Sentry docs, it's complicated. Like, oh, I use this and this. Okay, I got to jump between docs. And it's like, we really actually can get away with the agents, or the agents slash the models, more importantly, are powerful enough that you don't really need that anymore. And so what if we could generate all the docs? This is not that. This was me kind of setting up an example, just trying to get a UI that worked. This is that. It's not good yet. What this does is it just passes a bunch of technology choices, which you can imagine we would automatically collect, passes it into an agent that has access to a bunch of stuff. This is just simulated right now, so it's not a big deal. And then generates the docs. And it is very slowly going. But the important thing is it is actually very slow. And so if you were building this, maybe your next thing would be like, well, why is it slow? How would you figure that out? Well, you'd probably do what I did, is you'd add some log statements like, oh, it completed in 30 seconds. This completed in 30 seconds, you know. And that's fine, but how are you going to iterate on that? Like if I went in, I'm like, okay, cursor, Claude, help me make this faster. Help me investigate why it's slow. You can't really easily do that. Like it might be able to pattern match a bunch of stuff, but what you could do is you could have Sentry installed here, which I don't, so I can't show you. And it would have the trace, and that trace would include all of the LLM calls. It would include any tool calls, and you would actually know where the time is spent, what might be able to be optimized, what might be duplicated, things like that. And that just automatically can be fed into the LLM. And so we haven't done that with Spotlight yet. You saw we only have logs and errors, but we are going to implement like the span tree in there as well. We've got some prior art in a Sentry MCP already, so we're going to pull that in. But I'm super excited about this, and so hopefully like next week it'll be functional. Obviously, you can pull down the repo and just run the sidecar like this today. But what we're doing is we're going to ship this. It's going to be a global system-wide install, but you should be able to just download like the .dmg or the .exe, install Spotlight. That will give you the desktop UI if you want. Use it or don't use it, it actually doesn't matter, but it also should maintain the sidecar in the background. And so our hope is that we can just make it really easy to update that without updating the entire app. And mostly because the MCP is going to take some iteration on, but super exciting. What happened over here? Did I accidentally kill Claude? I did accidentally kill Claude. Let's resume this. Let's resume this because we have to wrap this up for the video. All tests passed. Now let's verify the build still works. Try again on the build. I kind of need to like resume whatever you were doing thing. It just feels weird whenever I fuck it up and then I have to like say, okay, you can continue. But you know, it is what it is. So what did it actually do? We got a new fixture. Makes sense. Our original change handles trace meta. It's adding the mocks, which is a little overkill, but it's fine. Trace blah blah blah. Okay, just making sure it doesn't error out. And then why would the pm lock file change? I must have not have committed it in the previous patch. And I failed to run this too. Okay. And oh, actually, one more bonus. So because we suck at documentation and education and all these other things, which is, to be fair, a hard problem, a lot of people don't know. What is this? We're gonna have an ugly branch name. A lot of people don't know sort of the end-to-end workflow Sentry. So this is what's beautiful is like, I dropped it in here. It actually knows about this at this point. And so let's actually see if it can work. Let me run the build and we'll confirm. Let's commit the patch and annotate that the Sentry issue is fixed. I don't know that you have to tell it. You see this? Fix this. Actually, let's just commit. Cool, let's commit it. Let's commit. It should automatically mark it as fixed because with the MCP tool descriptions, we're actually indicating how to do this workflow. And what this does is it will propagate in the issue details that it was fixed in this pull request, which eventually becomes it was fixed in this commit. Really, you want it at the commit level. And then if you have deploy tracking set up or some other mechanisms, which honestly it's kind of tedious, but if you do, it will know when that commit has gone live. And if that error happens again, it automatically resolves the error. But if that error happens again, it will automatically trigger a regression notification in the sense of like, effectively, it'll verify with you and escalate that if it actually isn't fixed. So see, this is actually what we want because this is the notation Sentry understands. It just does that all automatically. I didn't tell it anything. I didn't have to build a Claude.md that said all of these things. The MCP server just gives it this information. So again, like it's a complicated, problematic spec in a lot of ways. It's not perfect. It may not be the future, but something like it is extraordinarily valuable already today. And so we're just going to push that. But it doesn't mean the CLA isn't useful either. So actually, I'm not going to run this right now because it will do random stuff. We're just going to push it up, create the pull request, all is well in the world. And that's it. Cool. All right, I'm going to cut the video there. Hopefully this was useful. Peace.